Welcome back to another Sunday night. It's AFN Live, presented to you by AFNN.net, the alternative football news network, AFNTalk.com, at AFN Talk across all social media. If you have any comments, thoughts, hit us up. Discuss anything that we discuss on the show with us. You can also call in live at 310-876-8064. I'm your host, once again, Michael Washington Weeks. I'm back for another week anyways. Hopefully they don't get rid of me here. Tonight on the show, we have NAL news, more of the Orlando Predators fallout involving Kenny McIntyre. We'll discuss that a little bit later on. We also have XFL news. How well is this background check going to be for the XFL? Does players now getting in trouble that have already been invited to the draft, what's the status going to be? We'll discuss a little bit about that, especially involving what happened with Ryan Mallett over the weekend. But first and foremost, we have IFL news. We have expansion, which is something that we love talking about here outside of possible mergers. It's expansion. We love discussing it. I mean, we had RJ Ciancio write a 4-part, I don't know, what was it, RJ, 4-part series on expansion, possible expansion.
Part 4 is coming out soon.
Four parts, column on that. But first, we have some coaching changes inside the IFL. Newly acquired, I'm not sure how to word this, I guess, newest addition to the IFL, the Duke City Gladiators, announced that their head coach is going to be former Nebraska Danger head coach, Pig Brown. Brown led the Nebraska Danger last year to a 7-7 record. I mean, 500. I don't know really necessarily if I would call that respectable, but I wouldn't say it's terrible either. It's kind of mediocre, kind of meh. But RJ, you're the one that brought this up as far as, to me anyways, as far as Duke City was concerned, announcing this. What does this do for Nebraska? I know that they're moving from the Nebraska area to Dallas because they were up for sale. What does this do for a franchise that's obviously shifting? And what does this mean for Duke City, moving forward? Is this going to be a hire that's going to hopefully help the transition into the IFL, where we've seen some teams kind of struggle adjusting to the league?
I do think it is going to be a transitional coach because as much as I do think Pig Brown is a very good coach, I don't think he's one of the elite coaches in the IFL, but right now you need stability. And when a coach jumps from league to league, that's very hard because it changes from play style to play quality to finding films in these new teams. Coach Brown has film on all these teams already. He knows how they work. And what it means for Duke City is he's going to help smooth that transition out. I don't think it's going to be seamless, but I do see them being possibly what Quad Cities and Tucson were this past year in the IFL, which is a scrappy team fighting for a lower seed in the playoffs.
Now we have AFT Buzz's Bryce Burge. He's back for another week with us here. How you doing, Bryce? Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah. We love hearing about your knowledge with the indoor league and whatnot, and we know that you have extensive ties to a lot of the leagues here. The IFL is up closer to where you are as far as in geographic location. At least the teams in the north, at least Green Bay. With Pig Howard coming over to Duke City, is this something that is, how to put this, an advantage for a team coming in, being able to grab a head coach from a league, from a different franchise that's already been in the league, compared to some of the expansion teams and other teams that are jumping from league to league?
Well, I think that was the argument that was being used initially by ownership of Duke City, because getting rid of a back-to-back championship coach to bring in a new coach is always a little controversial in itself. So now when you've got this kind of scenario where Dominic Bramante is shown the door, it is a little confusing about what's going on there. And there was a little bit of controversy that seems to have worked itself out by now. But um, the thing is that Pig Brown is a mainstay of the league. You know, he's a Hall of Famer as a defensive player, and he's a guy that took over for Nebraska when they got rid of Mark Stout, and he's a guy that did a lot for that franchise. But now that the Danger has a lot of questions to it about whether it's going to relocate to Dallas or if it's not even going to have a team next year, having Devontae Sapp Lynch and most likely Tommy Armstrong take off for Oakland at this point because of the connections of the Lynches there with the Panthers. It just seems to be something right now that is about leaving Nebraska for them. But when you bring in a coach like that, they're trying to make an investment. They're trying to show this group in Albuquerque that this is the right thing to do. And the current ownership in Duke City hasn't always had the nicest of responsibilities and reactions from the crowd. There was a little bit of, a little bit of a rough period between the new ownership and the old ownership and what that meant for fans and all this other kind of stuff. So even though this is exactly what they said that they were going to do, there's still some fan brushback from it. And the easiest thing right now is to just go out there and win, baby. And that's what Duke City is going to try to do. And if things continue to go as poorly as they have in San Diego, as things have gone as poorly for expansion franchises that have jumped over, it's going to be a little difficult for them to really kind of showcase what they can do when you've got some solid teams that are looking to try to rally on success from last year in Tucson, Quad Cities, and Green Bay.
It's definitely going to be interesting to watch the fan base and the reaction to the team being in the IFL in this situation, because they were, the CIF champions. They were the top team in that league, and then they transitioned to the IFL. We've seen other teams transition from the CIF to the IFL not have immediate success. I kind of want to flip a little bit here and move away from Duke City and talk a little bit about the Danger. You brought them up a little bit about whether or not they may even move to Dallas, Bryce, and they may not even be able to proceed to the following, to play next year. Is the Pig Howard move from Nebraska to Duke City, is that an indication that we may not see them play next year? And what does that mean for the IFL when it comes to them wanting to hit that 15 to 18 team marker?
Aspect of that right now is the uncertainty of what's going on in Nebraska. And so Nebraska did say, the owners there said flat out that this was going to be something that would be difficult for the team, and whether or not that they'd be able to stay there or relocate. And Grand Island, Nebraska is the third largest city in Nebraska, and Nebraska honestly is a lot bigger than what a lot of people realize it is. So Grand Island as a city is bigger than what a lot of the potential markets are right now over in the AWFC, and as I consistently am annoyed by the discussion about what happens in the Pacific Northwest for bringing teams up there. But at the same time, a lot of people don't respect Grand Island, Nebraska, and this is one of the biggest families and one of the biggest financial groups in that area, and they were changing. They were getting out of the sport altogether, and if that's the case, it is going to be a difficult situation for them right now. Dallas, I think, is all but done. From what it comes down to, you don't want to say confirmed because there's plenty of ways that it could still fall apart.
Right.
The IFL NAL merger was pretty much all done, and then it fell apart. So. I think it's pretty safe to say that would be the case. I think what's different about that, though, is that if for some reason you don't have a team it may be safer for job security wise to jump ship and go somewhere else. Plus, the cool thing about Albuquerque though is that it is such a cool market. It's a very emerging place. It's very hip. It's very big. It doesn't have a lot of the population density that a place like Phoenix has, but it still has all the amenities of it. And so, it's not the place where Bugs Bunny took a wrong turn anymore. It's a very good market. And I think if people wanted to make an opportunity to really do something special in Albuquerque, they could, and this could be a really great defining moment for Pig Brown as the coach to kind of step up and really make something special.
Yeah, my fault. I said Pig Howard. I was thinking of the wide receiver. It's Pig Brown. Uh, just wanted to correct myself there. RJ, before we move on to the other coaching change in the IFL, what are your thoughts about Nebraska and the quote unquote all but confirmed move to Dallas? Is Dallas the place that you would have picked if you had bought Nebraska and needed to relocate them, excluding the East Coast and Connecticut, because we know how much you've been pining for that?
So if I had my way in a logistical sense, I think I think Dallas isn't a bad choice. I think the Texas Revolution really blew a great opportunity there. In my opinion, I think staying in Allen would have been a smart move and keeping the Texas name, but that's just me. I think another place that I would target is Rio Grande Valley. Because if you're aware of the regional leagues, the International Arena Football League had the Rio Grande Valley Dorados come back, and they packed State Farm Arena. Now, they had to leave that arena because they couldn't pay all the bills, but it showed the crowd still cares. That's a place I would have looked at. Salt Lake City, when Project Franchise had they had their team there, I think that was a good spot. So Screaming Eagles was a good team, not necessarily performance-wise, but crowd size-wise. I would stay away from Vegas, but, Billings is not a bad spot. The Billings Outlaws were a mainstay in the IFL's early years. You could see a lot of different places, but honestly, a place that I would have looked at had the arena not really been closed is the Perishing Center in Lincoln, Nebraska, because that was a good venue. They had the Lincoln Haymakers there before, and they had some teams prior, and, it's unfortunate that venue's closed because it was a good venue.
Yeah, fair enough. I just wanted to know about Dallas personally, because we know that sometimes just because it's a big city doesn't necessarily mean it's a big draw. And it was something that crossed my mind, not really, still learning the integral parts of, market and market sizes and, draws and whatnot. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on that for that reason as well. The other coaching change that took place, it's not really a change yet because there hasn't been an announcement yet, but the Iowa Barnstormers 2017 Coach of the Year, Dixie Wooten, who I believe has a career record of 38-9 and 2-1 in the playoffs, has left the Iowa Barnstormers. Bryce, is there anything that you can add to this as far as why the possible, why he departed?
Yeah, he got a job as the head coach of a prominent junior college down in the Houston area, Texas A&T. And
nice.
So there were some complications, like when you do that kind of stuff, you have guys that coach high school football. You have guys that coach position for like a D3 college, JUCO college. So it's not unheard of to have overlaps, but it just seemed like they couldn't work things out between the two organizations, and it kind of struggled along with that. I do know that Dixie Wooten is a quality coach, and the guy valued his time. in Iowa. He definitely understood what the Barnstormers meant for the indoor ball. And so the thing is that as many people are looking at XFL for an opportunity to play, there's a lot of people that are looking at the XFL for coaching opportunities too. And being a little bit closer to an XFL market, if that goes well, might be a little bit of a long-term plan for a guy like Wooten, who could transfer very, very easily over to the outdoor game. Out of all the coaches in indoor ball, he's probably one of the ones that could coach outdoor without missing a beat. So, maybe he's looking for a second-year opportunity as a position coach if things go well at Texas A&T.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I think that I've kept an eye on, as well as the coaching side of things, because with the IFL, rules and the game being a little more, mimicked after the outdoor game, it definitely would make sense to see the transition for the coaching sides of things. You know, be watching them leave and transitioning to the outdoor game. RJ, what were you going to say? You sounded like you were getting ready to say something, and I cut you off. My apologies, man.
No, it's fine. I mean, Texas A&T is in the Houston area. It's like you said, right? It's close to the XFL market. Well, I'm also wondering, and obviously, I'm not gonna figure this out because I don't want to hear personal information. But if Dixie Wooten's living in between Dallas and Texas, and the danger relocate, I wouldn't be stunned to see him work with the relocated danger team if they go to Dallas, or he could be devoting all his time to Texas A&T. So it could be either way. Either way, I'm happy for the guy. What's going on, though, is a transition and possibly a changing of the guard, unless I was able to get an amazing coach to fall in place there, because Iowa, in my mind, has the best indoor story of all time with Hall of Famer Kurt Warner. It is a market that's been around for a long time, and it's really built a culture up there that is almost unparalleled in intensity and love for the team. So how they fill this void, I don't know.
Is there any possible names that kind of hover around the IFL that, or even the indoor, I should just say in general, sport that might be able to fall into this and have similar success instantly that you could think of?
Off the top of my head, there's no one who I think, would be perfect unless they can just get someone to leave their job. Last year, Amir Ismail, the former Pirates coach in NAL, was supposed to coach the new Strike Force team. He didn't do that. He went to coach college ball. If they can lure him, I could see him doing a decent job filling in, but you're going to have to get him to leave where he's coaching right now. I don't know how easy that's going to be.
How about you, Bryce? Any names that pop up in your head that possibly could fill in that might be looking for a possible job there and Iowa appeals to them? Obviously,
I think the Iowa appeals to them is kind of the big issue. I mean, Salina just locked down their coach because he'd be probably one that I would think of right off the bat that might move up, because Salina is too small of a market to really get out of the CIF, which is a shame because honestly, now that Duke City's gone, Salina's the class of the CIF by a very large margin, in my opinion. That has to do with him as the coach. I don't know. I mean, the thing is that there's a lot of East Coast guys. There's a lot of assistants over there in the NAL that could be thinking about moving out. The NAL, I think, is going to get hit really, really hard with players that are going to be taken from the AFL. If the AFL expands the way that we do, and the grabbing of players from the NAL that the AFL has had the last 2 years, you could see some big hits to Jacksonville and Carolina. So maybe like a Josh Rosagnola is the defensive coordinator there for Carolina that won an AAL championship with the Havoc 2 years ago. That might be a possibility. I just don't know if Iowa's speed. So my thing is that they're probably gonna get somebody for sure that's aware of it. But you might see an outdoor guy, or you might see a former player, and I think that might be the possibility. This might be a first-time head coach and a first-time coach coming in to take Iowa.
No, that will definitely be interesting and fun to watch for sure next year, especially with the Barnstormers coming off a playoff run, last year. 310-876-8064. If you have any, thoughts, comments, you can come and chime in. Give us a call at AFN Talk across all social media. We're going to take a quick break. On the back side of the break, we are going to discuss a little more about the IFL. Bryce alluded to a little bit earlier as far as the name reveal for the expansion team in Oakland. We'll be right back. Welcome back to AFN Live. Before the break, we were discussing IFL coaching changes, coaching departures, anything that deals with coaching from the IFL. Before the break, 310-876-8064. Give us a call. Thoughts, comments, questions along those lines at AFN Talk across all social media platforms as well. Yes, including Instagram, afntalk.com, afnn.net, in association with primetimesportstalk.com. Now, more IFL news. The IFL, we knew from earlier in the year they were going to expand into Oakland. A lot of people were not happy about the market choice. I know that our resident AFN Live co-host RJ was one of them that wasn't too pleased with the expansion into Oakland. They released the team name that was going to be in Oakland, the Oakland Panthers. RJ, thoughts on the team name? We're going to start right in. I'm just going to dive right into it. Thoughts on the team name? Bryce?
Yeah, so it's a name. The Oakland Panthers has like a local lexicon, which I think is important when you think about teams out west, because a lot of people from this part over here is a little different when you think about names. It could be literally anything, but out on the West Coast, there's a lot of teams that have historical meaning, and the Oakland Panthers is one of them. And they've had different indoor league and high school team names and stuff like that. It's similar to like what happened in the MLS when they brought in the Portland Timbers and the Vancouver Whitecaps and the Seattle Sounders. Those were names of soccer teams that people were familiar with, and it meant something to them because it was the same history. And this is a little bit different, but for Oakland, they had to do something that was gonna bring some pride, because the last Bay Area team was the San Jose SaberCats, and they had a very unique and individual history to them that is not able to be replicated at this time. And so for them to go with Oakland, for them to bring that name and to have the other connections to the area, I think that was something that I thought was fitting and really kind of matches what they're trying to do in Oakland in a way that it's hard to describe if you're not from there.
Yeah, for sure. And that was a lot of the same thought process that I was having. I did mention to RJ a few days ago that the proposed spring league, the Freedom Football League, they were going to have a proposed Oakland franchise with the name Oakland Panthers. They do not own the copyright, as RJ has, or the trademark, or whatever you want to call it, as RJ has pointed out to me. RJ, your thoughts on the team name, as well as the significance that deals with the FFL and the possible correlation there, not necessarily to the IFL franchise, but what could that mean if the FFL ever does play it down?
First of all, love the name. I love the fact that it does, like Bryce said, have a unique connection to the city. I think that's important because, when you're marketing to minor leagues and smaller leagues, you can do that. You can be a little more hometown specific with your names than having to take these generic names that you see in the pros a lot. So I like that. Secondly, as what it means for the Freedom Football League, if they ever take a snap, I mean, it's going to hurt them. I don't know. I mean, I just don't have any strong feelings about what it's going to mean for the FFL. Now, as far trademark-wise, because the trademark for Oakland's for indoor ball. So I guess you could file a trademark for outdoor ball under the Oakland Panthers name. It'd have to be, I think, just different merchandising. Bryce, just interject whenever I start becoming incorrect here.
All right, so just to give some breakdown there, when thinking about similar names like this, it would have to be very very clear cut that there's not something that overlaps in terms of confusion. So the best example that I can give in terms of recent history with a copyright and trademark claim regarding a team name actually deals with the Las Vegas Golden Knights and the Army Golden Knights with their paratrooping group, because it's called the same thing. The U.S. Army filed the petition, and the Las Vegas Golden Knights was, we can see no confusion between people showing up to an ice arena in the middle of the desert thinking that they're going to see paratroopers come in. And that's how they ended it. And the case was dropped. It was dismissed with any kind of lack of credence. And so with this one, though, what's different in this is that you have minor league sports underneath California law. You've got some confusion in terms of indoor, outdoor, anything that's not NFL. You've got emerging teams that are coming out at the same time. I think there is a legitimate possibility of confusion that would pop up that would, in this case, help out the IFL. But that's just kind of an initial thought process on it.
Yeah, and I mean, but to be quite honest, I mean, I don't think anybody here actually expects the FFL to play it down, or they don't seem to be really moving in the right direction, at least for 2020. Their proposed season to start.
On it.
Yeah, for their proposed season, at least, anyways. I just thought it was interesting because of the correlation. Because as soon as I saw the symbol or the logo that they revealed, which I love, by the way. I'm a big logo guy, and I like the logo, at least the one that they. I don't know if that's the official logo or not. I didn't see the press conference, but I love that one. When I saw that, I knew it was the correlation to the FFL. I just didn't know what the issues were that might be proposed to this if the FFL was to ever play it down. With that said, this Oakland Panthers franchise in the IFL is actually going to have a little bit of a national spotlight brought to it because one of the co-owners, I'm assuming RJ, you were the one that brought this one as well to my attention, is Marshawn Lynch, the former Seattle Seahawk and Oakland Raider running back in the NFL who had that beast run, Super Bowl champion, and he has ties to the Oakland area. RJ, what does this mean for the Oakland Panthers franchise? Does it automatically instantly bring some kind of legitimacy to it just because he's attached to it?
I think it does. I really think it does. It's not like he's this guy who no one knows, who's an investor that, oh, you're bringing in something to my town. Marshawn has actively been giving back to the community for a while, so he already has great relations with the city. He's playing with the Raiders, and he's keeping football in Oakland. You got to remember, the Raiders are moving out. So that means they're going to be the only pro team in Oakland, and Oakland loves football. They've been home to the Raiders for a long time, excluding a couple excursions to LA, but excluding those, it's been since 1960 when the team was originally called the Senors for about 2 weeks. But that's besides the point. Point is, Oakland loves its football, and good on Marshawn for getting another team in there. And I also think it gets a little of the skepticism away from me thinking it's a purely Roy Choi-owned franchise for the indoor and arena aficionados, because now we can differentiate it from other Roy Choi franchises saying, yeah, but this one's Marshawn Lynch. It's that shiny toy you can hold up and say, look what we got here. So to all the Raiders fans who are pissed that, they're taking our Raiders away, now you got your Panthers. Another thing that and I really will be somewhat frustrated if they don't do this on opening night is Skittles for free. Come on, Marshawn, do it.
RJ's going to be the marketing director over there for the Oakland Panthers. I can already see how that's going to go. Bryce, you mentioned it earlier about the Nebraska danger running back, Marshawn's cousin. I believe it's his cousin, Sap Lynch. Obviously with the connections there, what is the likelihood that we could see him, end up moving over to Oakland and being their starting running back on day one? I mean, you would think that this is kind of, all but confirmed, right?
I would say it's 99.9%. If he's playing in the IFL, that's where he'll be. And so, and the question is who comes with them? Tommy Armstrong and Devontae Sapp Lynch, the former Cornhusker, those two paired off really well. They had this run pass option that was really tough to defeat because they were both very good players. And one of the things about Nebraska, when their defense finally held, and they ended up moving over their top wide receiver to play cornerback last year, and that's when they solved a lot of their defensive issues. It wasn't offensive problems that did that team in. So when you think about pairing up the former Cornhusker out there with a coach that created the A11 and all of the unique possibilities that they could do with that squad, and with the different formations that you're probably going to see, the overloads, the backside draws, the expansion of the pocket, this could be something that it's completely wild. And I'm really looking forward to it because I know that's a long way to get to the point that you were saying, though. But really, I think that what's great is who's going to show up with them. Will you get some guys that played, that got cut by Oakland, staying around and popping up there? Will you get some friends down from Seattle? Marshawn Lynch is a well-liked guy, and he is so dedicated to that area. Just to kind of go off on a sidetrack again, because I think this is one thing that really makes him a player's player and an Oakland player. Is that when he went up, and a guy that is notorious for speaking on his own terms, both positively and negatively, goes up to the Oakland City Commission and says flat out about renovating the Coliseum to keep the Oakland A's. And he stands there as a member of the public and a member of the community in a way that really not a whole lot of other people, maybe Chance the Rapper with education programs in Chicago. But, that's not how celebrities typically react. These are people that are representing their homes and being involved citizens and not using their fame as a way to do stuff. And that as a whole is going to bring so much of a level into Oakland right off the bat, that when you pair it up with the gimmick offense that you got in the new coach for them with Kurt Bryan, there's just so many opportunities that for a franchise that I was very, very against initially have made so many great moves to justify putting a team in Oakland, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and this is something that I think is can't be understated enough, is Marshawn Lynch's ties to this. A lot of people don't understand Marshawn because Marshawn, like you said, he's always been one of those quiet guys. He's been, anti. I don't want to say anti, but he's been very not media friendly because he doesn't like to talk in the public. It's something
I'm
that
just here so I won't get fined. Exactly.
I mean, everybody knows the Super Bowl, saying where he just said, I'm just here so I don't get fined. I think he's been misunderstood for a long time because a lot of people don't understand the amount of behind the scenes stuff that he does for the communities. I mean, the only reason he even came back was because he got a chance to play for his home city in Oakland. And that was the only place that he wanted to go because he was already doing so much for the community down there at that particular moment in time that he wanted to give the football franchise a chance to watch him play. And he gave them 2 years of what he could. And, now he's doing something that is going to keep football, as RJ said, in the city at least a variation of it, when the Raiders, moved to Vegas. Now, whether or not the Raiders fans latch onto the Panthers the way that they did the Raiders is still yet to be seen, but Marshawn Lynch's name being attached to it is definitely going a long way to make this a little more reputable, at least in my opinion, especially with as much as he does inside that community. So that definitely doesn't go unstated. And like you said, if you bring Tommy Armstrong along with Devontae Sapp Lynch, that should be a fun team to watch next year.
Yeah, and I want to say something that I realized just partway through this. So all right, this is all going to make sense, okay? So hear me out. The Texas Revolution signed Terrell Owens. Now, guess who came from that franchise? Fred Taylor. Now, Fred Taylor was in the backfield when Marshawn Lynch was drafted to Buffalo. Fred Taylor played indoor ball and was in the backfield with Marshawn. So you're telling me that a guy who played for a team that brought in a former NFL star, went to the NFL, and then played in the backfield with Beast Mode, and now Beast Mode's coming in to do his own indoor football thing? Like, I'm sorry, that's kind of like some Christopher Nolan Inception type movie.
I'm assuming you had a point there, RJ.
The point is, Marshawn played in the same backfield as the guy who played indoor ball before. That was the point, but
that was like the worst game of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon I've ever heard of. We love you, RJ, but
we love you, RJ. You were 310-876-8064. That is the number. If you want to try to decipher what RJ just said and clarify it a little bit further for us, that would be...
If you need some right conspiracy yarn, I got some on sale. Because, I mean, they're coming straight from RJ's bedroom right now.
At AFN Talk across all social media platforms. Maybe you can give RJ some advice as to where he can buy his yarn so it doesn't break when he stretches it. AFNtalk.com, AFN.net. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back from the other side of the break, we have XFL news with their background policy, how it could affect somebody that has already been invited to the draft upcoming in October, and what does this mean for Ryan Mallett in Arkansas. So give us a couple minutes and we'll be right back. Welcome back to AFN Live. I'm your host, Michael Washington Weeks, 310-876-8064. If you want to try to help RJ with his conspiracy theories or 6 degrees of separation or Kevin Bacon or whatever you want to label it, RJ, I have no idea what you were doing before the break. At AFN Talk across all social media platforms, AFNtalk.com, AFN.net, in association with PrimetimeSportsTalk.com as well. So over the weekend, guys, quarterback Ryan Mallett, former Arkansas quarterback Ryan Mallett, former NFL player Ryan Mallett, got pulled over, ticketed, arrested for a DWI situation in Arkansas. Now, we know that Mallett got his invite to the XFL to be part of their draft that's coming up in October. I think it's something like 3 or 4 weeks away. But the interesting part here is the XFL has background checks for each of their players. And they were pretty adamant about sticking to this background, clean history, I guess, formula for their players in order to be able to play in the XFL. Now, Bryce, we discussed a little bit about DWI being a misdemeanor in, I believe, most states, unless it's a repeat offense. Is this something that could hinder or hiccup Ryan Mallett's participation in the XFL if he was to be drafted? Will this disqualify him from playing in the XFL if they stay true to their background policy?
What I think is the biggest question for me is that I will tell you, I don't have a clue. and that's probably not the answer you were looking for.
Nope.
And this is probably something that I should have clarified pre-show, just because I didn't really think about it until just right now. Is that this is ongoing? This is happening right now. This is happening like as it deals with something, and I don't think that this was something that they necessarily prepared for. Uh, and so now that I kind of take a little bit of step back, because we know the case, the local ABC affiliate put the body cam footage up. It's an hour
Yes.
of the sobriety test. He failed it. It was clear that he failed it,
He stepped backwards. It was not good.
and so it was very clear that he failed it.
Yes. Okay.
Even though that when he blew, it was 1/1000th over the legal limit.
Yep.
That is the difference between literally a Bush Light and a Bud Light. Which even when they come from the same group, like that's how little of a difference that you can have between this kind of stuff. And so, like, Michael, you're from Maine, and I'm from the UP. If there's one thing that people around us do well, it's drink. And and so when you start talking about different alcohol contents, and you talk about what a professional football player, in terms of size and weight and all the health aspects, there's so many things that can go into those little things. And so while this is all still going on, when dealing with literally what seems to me the ludicrousness of the scenario as a whole, where we're talking about literally the lowest possible number on the legal scale for recognition of this substance in your bloodstream, is the difference between the illegality and legality of the scenario, while also paired up with the fact that he miserably failed the sobriety test. It wasn't necessarily a situation where, like, he passes the sobriety test and then they have him blow afterwards and he has like a .081. This guy failed the sobriety test, and it's out there for everybody to see. So as this goes on, as the Arkansas prosecutors in the local district and jurisdiction handle this case, as all that kind of develops, this is going to be a very unique situation, because I think even in terms of any kind of operating while intoxicated or whatever it's discussed as in that general overarching understanding of the term, it is odd. So now you have to figure out, how does this play into everything else, and how does the XFL deal with ongoing litigation? Because in the past, all these things about background checks were mostly because you didn't want you didn't want people that had beat up their wives. You didn't want people that were habitual offenders and habitual drunks or anything like that. And that was the basis of it. So that way you didn't have Ray Rice's getting a restart, or even like Maurice Leggett or something like that. And so it was a very unique situation, because they were come out hard with it. But now that it's ongoing, now it's an active situation. This is a very first type thing for the XFL, and it's really going to show us a lot about what they're going to do. And to tell you the truth, I don't think they know either.
Yeah, and just to clarify, obviously, I don't think anybody here really has any idea as to whether or not this is going to hurt, Ryan Mallett's chances to play in the XFL.
It's not helping, that's for sure.
Well, and that's the thing, though, and I think that this is one of the things that we want to make sure that we don't beat to death, but at the same time needs to be stressed, is this is not something that's definitely going to help his chances at the XFL level, because this is one of the things that they have been trying so hard to avoid because of all the negative press that happens in the NFL. I mean, you can just take anything. You could take Antonio Brown, anything in 2019 involving Antonio Brown. This is something the XFL wants to try to move away from. Now, the likelihood of them getting the whole clean, wholesome, family fun type of league image it's probably not very high. RJ, what about you? I mean, obviously this is all speculation. Do you think that this is something that could disqualify Mallet if this is the route the XFL wants to go? Or do you think that this is a small enough of offense where it might be kind of like you mess up once, but again, you're gone type of situation?
Well, I think first things first, I want to know who's making this decision. Because I know Vince McMahon has done some things where he's gone through a lot of different loopholes to make things work so he can succeed. Now, I know he's given a lot of control to Oliver Luck, but at the same time, this is Vince's baby, so it'll be interesting to see if he interjects. At the same time, listen, I'll never say drive drunk. That's the stupidest thing in the world. But like in the grand scheme of things, he didn't beat someone up. He didn't sexually assault someone. He's as far as I know, he's not a repeat offender. So I think you could see him make it, but maybe this lowers his draft stock potentially. So maybe instead of getting that tier 1 pay, he might go down to tier 2 or tier 3.
Well, yeah, and again, I want to clarify for the listeners that this is all speculation as far as that's concerned. I think that one of the things here is obviously, he broke the law. He was arrested. I think that was one of the big things that people need to look at when it comes to saying, oh well, it's in the grand scheme it's not that big of a deal. Well, it potentially could be, because like RJ just said, never advocate drinking and driving, because you could kill somebody, you could kill yourself, you could kill just multiple people all at once if you were to be stupid enough to have something happen. And this came off of an accident, so this wasn't something that was just him getting pulled over because he was driving erratically. There was an accident involved. And like Bryce said earlier when I asked him the question, this is kind of an ongoing thing. And it's going to be interesting to see how the XFL reacts to this and what their, official statement or stance is going to be. I don't think that this is going to be something that the XFL is going to come out and publicly denounce, RJ, because of the fact that Mallet technically isn't signed to the XFL at this point. It's not like the Landry Jones situation where they came out and held a press conference or announced it on national TV that Landry Jones is the first XFL player. I guess that we're going to see our best stance, or at least in my opinion, would be if he's at the draft in October or not. Wouldn't you think that would probably be the best?
Well, I
indicator?
think the biggest aspect of that, though, too, is that in terms of things that are still ongoing, that it's very difficult given the evidence that has been shared in the public venue and the public scope. That being said, Ryan Mallett still has every single constitutional right that he has left to his willingness to exercise them. And so right now, when we say that he's arrested, that's true, but he's not convicted of a crime. Right. He's not been convicted by the process, and he's still actually awaiting arraignment in first initial aspects of things. So, yes. When we talk about the judicial system, not only do we have the issues about how this impacts other people's employment opportunities, but we also have just the general delays of our court system as well. One thing that I think was blasted by this panel multiple times was dealing about just how little pull the NFL actually had in terms of getting information regarding serious crimes that were being perpetrated or at least alleged by players and staff. And so it's really been the press that has gotten a lot of this information out through legal channels that has put it in the public eye, and the NFL gets the exact same stuff that we do by looking at our evening news. And so now with this kind of scenario, when we talk about this, we have to also talk about what happens to delay processes. to players that are not signed. My thing is that I don't think Ryan Mallett's going to be signed at all. I don't think he's going to be drafted if the situation is still ongoing. If for some reason he takes a plea deal and it's done, lickety split, then we'll see what happens, and that's a completely different story. But I'm going to take it in the basic understanding that typically court systems move slowly, and everybody's right to a speedy trial seems to go down the wayside based on scheduling. It's something that, depending on how quickly this moves through the court system, I think is going to solve a lot of the questions and a lot of the situations that we have in terms of uncertainties, and it will really put the ball in XFL's decision about what they want to do.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the big things here is, like you were saying, is, he has not been convicted of anything, and like you said, whether or not it's going to be something that's expedited to a plea deal or whatnot will determine what the XFL might do here moving forward. I do agree with you that I do not believe that he may even get drafted at this point in time just because of this. Now, whether or not that doesn't mean that he gets a chance at the XFL is yet to be seen, because he still may sign on as a free agent after the draft. Right now, I want to bring in co-host of Primetime NFL Talk Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and co-host here at AFN Live for the most part. When he's available, Kevin Drake is going to join us to talk a little bit about the Ryan Mallett situation. Now, I think that Kevin, you and I might be on the same page here that Ryan Mallett, we don't believe would have been a tier 1 quarterback. I think he had the potential to be a tier 1 quarterback. I don't think that that's necessarily something they're looking for. What are your thoughts and opinions about this DWI situation in Arkansas and his chances at the XFL?
Well, with the DWI and everything like that, and the fact that he utterly failed it, Bryce is right with the sense of this is all still in trial and everything. He's still going through the judiciary system to be able to be processed and be charged with something. But when it comes down to how the XFL looks at this and what it's going to do for his draft stock and whether he gets drafted, I'm kind of on the side with Bryce. I don't think he will, just because of how his performances in New England and when he was a starter in Houston in the NFL, how not so good they were. I don't think he'll get drafted. I think he will be a free agent. I think he'll come on and be a backup. But if he does get drafted, I think, like RJ says, it's more of a tier 2, tier 3 type of player. But I do agree with you for the most part, Michael, because Ryan Mallett isn't, this is the first time we've ever heard him doing anything wrong. This is the first time he's ever been in the headlines in the wrong. We had the likes of Baker Mayfield running from the police and coming to find out he wasn't doing anything wrong. It was just he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the cops stopped him to talk, and he thought he was in trouble. He ran. Colin Cowherd said he was undraftable. Ryan Mallett gets a DWI the first time ever, and he wasn't that great in the NFL. I don't think it hinders him at all. But whether he gets drafted or not, that's to be seen, because that's happening in October. But what this will look like for other players, if they've had incidents in the past, if something comes out in the open and the XFL looks at it, it's just like, oh, okay, this is different, because Ryan Mallett isn't the type of guy that we've known to do things wrong. Like I said, he's never been in the spotlight for doing anything wrong. So when it comes down to it, the XFL, they'll look at it, but I don't think it will hinder him that much.
I think that one of the biggest things here that we need to focus on too is, like Kevin said, is this isn't something that's a repeat offender for Mallett. This is not something like his 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th offense that we know of. I mean, it could have been a news item that kind of slid under the radar, but for the most part, I don't think he's ever been in the headlines other than this that I can remember. But also at the same time, we have to look at his on-play field in correlation to what the XFL is. I don't think he was ever going to be a tier 1 quarterback, and mainly I didn't think he was going to be a tier 1 quarterback because Baltimore literally brought in RG3 and cut Ryan Mallett while he was in Baltimore after he had already been there for a year and a half. And it's not like RG3 necessarily set the world on fire after his rookie year. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have more news pertaining to the NAL and the Orlando Predators fallout and the Kenny McIntyre situation that kind of broke over the weekend, probably, yesterday, I believe, maybe even today. And we want to discuss it a little bit to what we know of it. 310-876-8064 if you have any questions, comments, anything that pertains to Ryan Mallett, XFL, Indoor Football League, at AFN Talk across all social media platforms, and afntalk.com, afn and .net. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Over guy 310-876-8064. That is the number. It is active. Give us a call. Talk to us. We're okay people here, except for maybe RJ. I'm not sure. At AFN Talk across all social media platforms. afntalk.com, afn and .net.
You know, RJ is a pretty cool guy, you know, when he's not spewing nonsense.
That's where I was going with that. Thank you, Bryce.
Just had to be clear, because RJ isn't.
This is
I swear, sometimes I'm glad you live so far away from me.
It's all love here. It's all love here at AFN Talk.
A very twisted sense.
Of course it is. The Orlando Predators in the NAL, well, not really, I don't want to say the NAL, but the Orlando Predators for sure of the NAL made a lot of headlines with quarterback Balin Trujillo kind of exposing some of the issues, I guess that's for lack of a better term, I guess at this point in time, that he was having with owner Kenny McIntyre. It really made a lot of waves, especially inside the arena football world, kind of put a black eye and a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. Today, in a arena football fans forum on Facebook, a woman named Sharon Jones posted this. Hello, fans. My name is Sharon Jones. I wanted to follow up with you on this Kenny McIntyre scam. He is a true scam artist, and his financial woes didn't just start with the Orlando Predators 2019 football season. He scammed me out of $5,000 on March 9th, 2018. He initiated and signed a shareholder agreement with me to invest $5,000 worth of arena football stock, and I would get 2.5% of the sale of the team. I would operate like a silent partner. Upon the sale, or on or before, I would get 2.5% of the sale and my initial $5,000 back as well. He has lied on countless occasions about payment and will get upset with you if you confront him about it. He is dishonest, incapable, and lacks integrity when it comes to money. I'm in the process of sending a demand letter for payment, and I will be contacting Channel 6 and 9 ASAP. This scam artist must be stopped before he ruins other people's lives. And then she asks if you have any questions or information to private message her. Thank you. AFT Buzz's Bryce Burge has been following this and has provided a lot of insight as to what's going on. Bryce, what do you make of this, and what can you what can you provide for us as far as information at this point in time with this?
So the words that I think are most intriguing about the specific details of this is that while the apparent aspects of things are pretty straightforward, that this lady feels that she was swindled out of an investment opportunity of $5,000 by Kenny McIntyre is apparent. But there's a couple of keywords that I really wanted to bring forward, because not only did she send this in that group, she also sent this to Balin Trujillo, and that message to him privately had a couple, for the most part, was the exact same, had a couple of different things. But what I look at most is $5,000 worth of arena football stock. And that is so wide open. What does that mean? In this case, arena football, what the Orlando Predators were, they were an arena football league team. They were one of the AFL teams, coached by Jay Gruden back when he was with that squad, folded back as part of the AFL back in the day and has been re-brought back up in the National Arena League. So that indoor, that arena aspect thing, it's all very blurred together. That's why the individual branding of the different leagues is so important. Because if it's flat out about the league and not about the team, then there could be problems there. Now, the other aspect, too, is that if there was some kind of aspect of fraudulent team ownership, now you have an entirely new opportunity of litany of issues that pop up here. Because if somebody has team ownership or invested through Kenny McIntyre without some kind of signed agreement, then there's really a lot of issues. I have not had a chance to call up Miss Jones in this case, but one of the things that I would ask about is what kind of signed agreement did you have, and how the heck can I see that thing? Because when looking at this, if you have what's a silent partner that really isn't a silent partner, and you've got some things that are a little off kilter with the ownership ratios, majority ownership, voting rights, a ton of different stuff like that, you could have a whole host of issues. And it's completely different than the stuff that we had before. I personally think that there are some criminal issues at the very least when dealing with the overlap with Apollo Chariots, which is the official transportation company of the Orlando Predators, and how that company popped up as credit card charges when people bought Orlando Predators tickets. But now this opens up an entirely new way that talks about the actual organization of the team. And that could have a big problem with how it interacts with other groups. Just as for extra information here, the NAL is a nonprofit entity that is its own separate thing, while all the teams are privately owned for-profit businesses. And so that does have some significant differences in terms of how it's layered and organized based on both Florida and federal law. But at the exact same time, if you've got somebody who thinks that they own 2.5% of this team, and then all of a sudden they don't actually own that team, but yet that 2.5 is lined up, is very interesting. Now, the other aspect of that is that $5,000 gets you 2.5% of that team. That's a little low. So, just from conversations that I've had with other owners around the league, I know with one team that I'll remain nameless, it's 20% of the team is 40 grand.
40 grand.
Yeah, so like it's a little bit different in terms of what to expect in terms of individual ownership throughout the team. So I really want to see that shareholder agreement and what that entails and what legal rights are in play. Because if that's a signed document that is not approved by the league, then that might be the way to get Kenny McIntyre out.
And that's something that the NAL is obviously going to have to tackle in this offseason, because with everything that's been going on down there in Orlando, aside from what happened with New York at the end of the year. RJ, I just want to bring you in on this a little bit here. What are your thoughts on this situation? I mean, obviously it's not a good look. It's clearly just getting worse. You know, if there's truth behind this and what's being said, and it's just the more it gets exposed, the uglier it gets. What are your thoughts on this and what was posted today?
The thing that stuck, this thing that really caught my attention was that you're owning part of the team. So I'm curious what process she went through to actually buy that part of the team, allegedly. And therefore, if the NAL or people wanted to say, okay, if Kenny's making this open to everybody, hypothetically, could we just buy out his majority ownership stake?
Yeah, and that's obviously something that, it is something that again, the NAL is going to have to tackle in the offseason to try to figure out the best way to handle this, especially if Orlando is going to be, proceeding forward with the 2020 season, and how to go about it to kind of make sure that everything is not going to bring more negative press than already has been brought to the NAL as a whole. I think that that's going to be important for the commissioner and other owners to kind of step in and really focus on finding a way to, I guess, work out these issues to try to bring a more positive product forward. That doesn't even include the issues that they could be facing with AFL getting coaches and players from them with their expansion. So the NAL has got a lot of work for them to do in the offseason, and it's definitely going to start with Orlando here. Bryce, do you have anything else on this, or RJ, do you have anything else that you want to say as far as this is concerned with Kenny McIntyre? Or and if you don't, then what does this mean for Orlando? I mean, we bring this question up a lot, and I do it often. Does this possibly hinder Orlando being able to play a 2020 season?
Yes. Right now, like here's the biggest aspect of all this is that this is a franchise that's obviously unstable at the top, and whether or not things are illegal, there's definitely bad business procedures that have been very clearly shown.
Oh, for sure.
And there's ways for allegations, and there are ways for rumors that can get going around that can just sink a group. Let's not talk about legal implications. Let's not talk about the actual trustworthy of an organization within the league. Let's just talk about the fan base.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking about, you hear all this kind of stuff, and the way that it was kind of brought out by Trujillo, who basically had his side and then went for it. He had his side, stepped up, and just said, this is what I got. This is the proof that I did. And with him actually being a host, he's a co-host of a show on ESPN Radio in Orlando. The guy is not typically a journalist, in the ways that I would consider myself with a formal education and everything. But he cited his sources. He got the information. He protected sources that felt uncomfortable over the circumstance. He did a lot of things that the average person would have screwed up. And now when you have that connotation to it, you have a believability to you that after losing this team already, based on the giant disaster that was the AFL for the the early teens in 2012 to 2016, I'd say that league was a disaster, and it's a shell of what it used to be, and now you've also got Yahoo Sports said that we're the AAF champions, and you've got the Florida Tuskers that were kind of there, and just out of all the things in the just the constant disrespect to UCF, just whatever you could think of, Orlando as a football market has just been
hammered,
disrespected.
For sure.
It reads like a Dangerfield sketch. It is just so disrespectful to that market, that whether or not we look at Orlando and what Kenny McIntyre has done or not done, right or wrong, just what it's got to be a football fan in Orlando right now has got to be a struggle.
And that fan, and that fan base, Kevin's alluded to it a little bit here, and he's with us still. That fan base, the Apollos, they were very much in support of the Apollos. Kevin, what else can you add as far as the fan base is concerned in Orlando?
I can tell you, I've been to the Knights tailgates. I've been to these parties, at different fraternities and different houses, because you have the natural dorm system at colleges, but then you also have kids that have their own places that they rent and have parties out of. The football fan base in Orlando is the equivalent to what the fan base is in New England or even in Dallas, with how the fans are. When they came out and stated that they were the 2017 national champions because Alabama had lost to Deshaun Watson and the Clemson Tigers, they thoroughly, if you were an Alabama fan and you walked up and laughed at it, you had about 50 people walk up to that fan and be like, get out. No, we're the champions. You weren't. You lost. These fans sit here and pride themselves on their football because they know how good their team is and how good their teams are, but the disrespect they give because of the conference they're in and the legitimacy of their players and their coaches and how they run their football system, it's they find it really disrespectful. And they'll, if you could take a fan and put them on any show, and they'll tell you flat out that when you go to UCF and you see the fan base and talk to the players and talk to the people in general, the community, they will tell you that if you put an NFL team in Camping World Stadium in Orlando, that stadium would be sold out almost every time a football game is played.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we discussed with the Apollos, and obviously you could tell with their turnout as far as the fan base is concerned. The Predators were, a cornerstone for the AFL at their height, and it's kind of just sad to see a former player in Kenny McIntyre, who's now the owner, and all the negative press and stuff that's come out of there this year alone, especially towards the end of the year. It's going to be very tough to see what kind of players are going to make up that team. They had a huge turnover ratio with their roster this year alone, with players that were, that wanted to be there and wanted to play. Their leading tackler, their leading receiver, their leading running back, anything along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2020 moving forward, and if they do happen to have a season, hopefully, everything can get itself worked out, and hopefully some legitimacy can be brought back to the Orlando area, especially in indoor football. We're going to take one more quick break. When we come back, we'll have our 2-minute drill as we wrap up the evening. At AFN Talk across all social media platforms, 310-876-8064. We're in association with PrimetimeSportsTalk.com, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to AFN Live. I'm Michael Washington Weeks, your host at AFN Talk across all social media platforms. You heard the voiceover, the number's active. It is good. Give us a call. Talk to us. Right now, we're going to jump into our last segment. It's our 2-minute drill. This is our final thoughts segment where anybody on the panel can just discuss anything and everything. They have 2 minutes roughly to do it. I'm going to try to limit you guys to 2 minutes. Sometimes we go a little over here, but try to keep it as close as possible. RJ, we'll start with you. It was a fairly busy weekend for some news, but let's start with you. What are your final thoughts for this evening?
I'm excited that there's a new video game coming out, Maximum Football 2019. A lot of people have been complaining about Madden. This is an indie-developed game. It's got Doug Flutie sponsorship behind it, so I'm looking to check it out. It'll have team customization, which Madden hasn't had for years for some messed up reason. So I'm looking forward to looking into buying that potentially.
What platform?
Xbox One or PS4. I think right now it's only approved for PS4 though, so they're looking to get approved by Xbox One.
Who's producing it?
It's an independent studio. I forget their name. They did a Canadian football game a couple years back.
Nice. That is that it? Did you do anything this weekend fun, RJ, or no?
I'm just tired, man.
I feel you there. Speaking of tired, Bryce, What about you, man? What's your 2-minute drill? Final thoughts? Anything?
What, what are you implying there, sir?
You're a busy dude. You don't sleep very much. That's what I'm implying. And you're still in the process of settling in from your move. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
that's
saying.
true. So I did get internet at the house finally, so that means I'm actually able to record from my living room here in Chatham, which has more cows than people. Um, it's the home of the experimental farms, or one of the branches of the experimental farms for Michigan State, who lost in one of the dumbest college football games that I've seen in a very long time. To Arizona State, which is not a team that should be good enough to be 3-0. So it just kind of solidifies some really bad. This is going to be a really bad year for Big Ten football. So it's an interesting aspect, but there was a big sporting event that a lot of people I didn't think cared about still, but I saw it on CNN actually, coming from the Alola League. Uh, Ash Ketchum finally won a Pokemon Master designation in the latest episode of Pokemon, the television show. Somehow the
Oh,
10-year-old gets his first championship after 22 years, after losing 8 different tournaments in the show's career and running. So he finally went out and won something in the Alola League. I mean, that's of course not counting the Orange Islands League, which is basically, like going out and winning a Korean baseball championship just to come back, kind of with the eastbound and down route there uh, for a little bit there for Ash Ketchum. But for something that I think has impacted a lot of people in our age group, to see a storyline finally develop the way that it did, I think is a little interesting. And I also never ever want to be made fun of again for the weird sports that I follow and are interested in. If I'm reading on this, I'm reading about this on CNN.
no, absolutely agree with you 100% there. Congratulations to you said his name is Ash Ketchum.
Obviously, you weren't one of the ones that got
No.
Got big into Pokemon.
No, I was never big into Pokemon. No, not at all. Well, congratulations to that 10-year-old kid. Anyways, whatever. Kevin, you're still with us. I heard you. You wanted to chime in and say something there, but if you want to take a couple minutes, I'll give you a couple minutes to kind of have any final thoughts if you really want to. It's up to you.
I mean, I just want to say, he's 10 years old, but he's been doing this for 22 years. Let that sink in for a little bit.
It's literally not even a once in a lifetime scenario because the math doesn't work.
No.
It really doesn't. And Michael, let me guess, you were more Digimon than you were Pokemon, weren't you?
No.
Beyblade?
Magic the Gathering.
All right, I respect that. But
yeah.
no,
Magic the Gathering.
I guess Magic the Gathering is so good. Those planeswalkers will mess you up. And the Russo brothers, who directed Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, are coming out with a Magic the Gathering TV show that'll be premiering on Netflix sometime in the near future. Just want to point that out there for you.
Animated or live action?
Live action.
Oh, yes, that's fantastic.
Exactly.
That is fantastic.
But my final thoughts, I guess the college football season's actually been really good the past 3 weeks, especially with LSU showing us that they could contend for a championship if they continue going the way they are. But other than that, that's really all for me.
Yeah. My final thoughts, I watch a lot of football, and the Ottawa Red Blacks up in the Canadian Football League, they need to make a trade. Their quarterback situation is dismal. They've become the worst team in the league. They got blown out by BC this weekend. Not a team that you should ever get blown out by, at least not this year. I thought the Arizona Rattlers re-signed Drew Powell. I think that's a huge signing for them as well as in the IFL. We didn't mention it earlier. And, yeah, man, I don't know. I enjoy the weekends of football. I don't really have anything else other than just that, I guess. I live a pretty boring life for the most part. Get up at 4:30 and work till 1 every day. So, other than that, that's about it. So, unless anybody else has anything, that's going to do it for us here at AFN Live tonight. 310-876-8064 as always is the number you can call to talk to us at AFN Talk across all social media platforms. If you have anything else, you can follow me on Twitter at MW2AFN Talk TLK. Bryce, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you, my man? And where can they listen to you as well?
Well, we're syndicated on a bunch of different places, but that first show is usually always on Fridays there on 920 WON out of Brooklyn, New York. And if they want to find me on Twitter, at that Bryce Burge is the Twitter handle.
Perfect. How about for you, RJ? Twitter, anything, where can they find you if they need to get a hold of you or follow you or find the shows? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Ciancio RJ. Ciancio is spelled C-I-A-N as in Nancy, C-I-O. You can find me on my Instagram, which is RJ_Ciancio, or my Facebook, RJ Ciancio. I'm always happy to talk. Just hit me up in the messages. Let's talk football or talk life.
Sounds good, my man. That's going to do it for us tonight at AFN Live. Until next Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern, I'm Michael Washington Weeks for RJ Ciancio, for Kevin Drake's guest appearance, and for Bryce Burge of AFT Buzz in association with PrimetimeSportsTalk.com. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week.